Okay, so I'm Amy. I'm from the Dayton, Ohio area. My husband and I went through quite a few years of infertility, and in the midst of that, we had multiple people come to us and ask, "Well, you want to be a parent? Will you adopt, so and so's child?" And it just was never really on our minds. And then one day, the Lord just really softened really my heart and then my husband's for that. And mostly we just questioned, could we love somebody else's child? What would it look like to have a birth mother, a birth father in our lives? And just a lot of questions. So we did a lot of research, started kind of putting ourselves out there, and then ultimately did home studies and things like that to become approved to adopt a child if that happened. And along the way, we met a teenage girl from our area who was pregnant with an unplanned pregnancy. And she had actually been friends with a girl who went to our church, and that's how I found out about her. And so one day on a Sunday after church, I called this teenager's mother, and I just said, "I'm Amy. I hear your daughter's pregnant, might be considering adoption, and I'd like you to consider us." And this was the first time that I'd ever felt peace about when someone would talk about an adoption or a child that was available. And so I knew there was something on it. And so her mother just sat there and in silence for a moment, literally just said, "This is why we've waited." She said, "I told my daughter we probably need to get to an adoption agency. We need to get some things going." And she said, "And now I know this is why we didn't." And it was like from that moment, like this child was going to be ours. It was the craziest thing. And so we soon met them. We met our birth mother and our birth father, who were still in relationship together, but knew they weren't ready to be parents. And we got to follow our son's ultrasounds. We were there when we found out he was a boy. And so there were some interesting things that happened throughout the pregnancy, but God just showed his hand over and over that he was faithful, and that this birth mother was so faithful to deliver him. We followed our birth mother through her pregnancy from probably about maybe 12 weeks on, so through much of the pregnancy. I got to go to doctor appointments and hear his heartbeat. And she had some complications, but she was such a trooper and was so willing to make sure that he came into life and was healthy. And so on one Sunday morning, as we were getting ready for church, we got the phone call that she was in labor. And so off we headed to the hospital. And we had always been told we could be at the hospital, but we had to be in another room. She didn't want anyone in there but her mom. And God just so orchestrated that we were able to not only watch him be born, but my husband asked if he could cut the cord. And our birth mother said yes. And so I have a picture of my husband cutting the cord. And so God just made it such a beautiful story. And so after we brought him home from the hospital, she came to see us a few days later, her and her mother. And as they were leaving that day, we stood out on the front porch, and she shared with us that she had actually scheduled an abortion. I think I need a minute. So we got to watch our son be born, and actually my husband was even able to cut the cord. And so several days later, after we brought our son home, our birth mother and her mother came to visit us. And because it was an open adoption, we had decided that long before. I always had a heart for a birth mother. I couldn't imagine, wanting a child for so long. I couldn't imagine what she would go through to give her child to someone else. So my heart was always so full of compassion for her, even before I knew who she was. And so they came to visit. And when they were leaving, they told us for the very first time ever that our birth mother had actually scheduled an abortion early in her pregnancy. And her mother took her there. They signed in, they sat down, and then by the grace of God, our birth mother just said, "I can't do this." And so they got up and walked out. And I remember they said they went and sat in their car and just cried. And so I was so shocked to hear that. Because I'm sitting there holding this baby that's forever my son, and to think that he couldn't have had a chance to live. um, I'm so grateful to her. And my son is now 17 years old, and he's bigger than life. He's got this huge life. Like, he is smart, and he's athletic, and he has lots of friends, and he's loud, he's funny, and at every family gathering, he's the center of so much. He always has been since he was little. Everybody loves him. It's like he's the adopted one. So like I always feel like he's everybody's child. Like, everybody had a hand in it. The day he was born, it was a Sunday, and our whole family was at church. And when they knew that he was being born, I called them, and in the middle of service, they stopped all of church, and they had on speakerphone, and they all got to hear his first cry. So like, I've always felt like he's everybody's child. And so he's this larger than life person with this huge future. And I think, my God, he couldn't have had an opportunity. Sometimes I look at him and I think he wouldn't exist had she gone through with it. So my plea to every teenager, every single mother who's found themselves with an unplanned pregnancy, is please, please, please consider life. I promise there's somebody out there who's longing to be a mother and a father, who wants to just love your child. And I can say that we've given our son every opportunity. He has an amazing life. And I know that our birth mother, she doesn't visit us often as she used to when he was growing up. She's gone on to live her life and had another child and have relationships, but we've always told her that our home is always open to her. She's always welcome. I'm a believer that our son has always known the truth about being adopted. He knows that's what makes him special. And I have always felt like it's good for him to know that he has all these people that love him, because his birth mother loves him. And one of the things she said to me a year or two ago, she emailed me and just said, she had this kind of revelation. He was 15 at the time, and she said that she had just finally, for the first time, shared her story publicly with someone. And she said it was the first time she could do it with a smile. And I remember I was so proud of her, but just also so sad that it took so long for her to feel that way, because for 15 years, she was questioning, did she do the right thing? And I know it had to be so hard for her to give up a child that, she grew in her womb for 9 months. But she ended that email by saying that she was so glad that she knew he had a family that loved him so much and a mom that loved him so much. And she's so right. We love him so much. I mean, he's our entire world. There's so many people out there that are longing to be parents. And so I would just say that if you find yourself in that position and you had no idea this was coming, I promise there's people that want to love your child, that will take your child, that will give them an incredible opportunity in a future. Every situation is different, but there's always people to help. I believe that the church is here at a time like this to help, that we're here to help those who find themselves, whether you choose adoption or you choose to keep your child, they so deserve a life. I believe in prophesying that my son is someday going to stand with me and his birth mother publicly and say, I'm alive because this woman chose life. And that together, the three of us are going to stand and testify the goodness of God, and that his creation is worth it. And we'll go through anything to save a life. And so I don't feel like, I don't know that our birth mother ever had any really second guessing or regrets. I remember her coming for the first visit, and she actually brought a friend of hers, a teenage friend of hers, who was also pregnant, because she wanted to show her friend that adoption was a good option. I couldn't believe, there was something really just amazing about our birth mother. She just had a perseverance in her, and I hope that someday she realizes she's just this amazing, strong, strong woman to even make this decision. But I don't think that she ever regretted. She knew she was giving her child to a home where there's a husband and a wife, mom and a dad, a safe, secure environment, opportunities for the future. She was in high school. She wasn't on her own. She was, still had school to finish, so I don't think she ever had regrets. Sorrows, yeah, obviously, sure, I'm sure, but always grateful to us. Any communications we had, she was always, our birth mother was always very, very grateful to us. So my son, I said, he's full of life. He's big, he's strong, he's funny, he's all these things, and he's very athletic. He's a baseball player. And I know that he is going to do something great in life, so God gets the glory. And this is why it's so important that birth mothers especially realize that there is purpose and there is a plan. And someday my son's going to be somewhere and people are going to look to him and he's going to get to say, I'm alive because my birth mother chose life. I deserve to live. I should have an opportunity to live out a life and a destiny. And so I just believe that that is, my son has a great future. I know that the Lord has his hand on him and he's supposed to be alive. Our children deserve, every person deserves to be alive.